This is painted on Clairefontaine black watercolour paper. It's £140, and for a full review of the paper do see my other film, but this is on the rough side, so one side is a knot or a cold press surface and the other is rough. So I have no plan here. I just want to see how the paints actually work on the surface, whether I can get a flow of colour and can get that sort of nice watercolour look, even though I'm choosing the most opaque paints that I can. And frankly, I am struggling. You see me add extra water in places really to encourage that paint to flow. So I'm choosing the most opaque colours that I've got in that little Artistro paint box that I'm using, and I'm trying to leave little flashes of the black just in the way that usually you leave little flashes of white. I'm trying to change the shape and size of lots of my leaves and marks just to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm using the shape of the brush to make the leaves, so each leaf is made in really 2 strokes. Sometimes I am having to go back in just to say to encourage a bit of a flow there, but on the whole I'm trying to keep everything fresh and simple. I'm then going to start varying some of the size of the leaves and try and tuck a few behind the flowers, just to stop it being too clunky. Here I'm using the tip of this little brush, it's about a size 6 or size 7, just to put in smaller marks, and then I put in some white on top of that mauve, and here I'm using white marks and putting pink on top, and I think that's quite a good process to do because that pink is a little more lively and can move around, but you've got the opaque white underneath, so I might do more of that if I did this sort of project again. I'm trying to balance things up, so I want a second big blossom here. I'm trying to change the shape of the petals so that they aren't all equal, just to make it look a little more natural. If you could possibly say that pink and purple and blue leaves are natural. There isn't a plan, and I'm just looking at balance, and I thought a few more sort of drapey lines, and then these sort of blobby marks. Well, I have no idea what sort of leaves these are, but to say to have different shapes and sizes just makes it more interesting. I would like again to explore doing a lot more layering, so starting with paler layers and probably coming on to slightly thicker layers. It's always a good idea just to move your paper around so that the natural mark is comfortable. You know, you could really struggle if you kept the paper the same way up, so don't ever be frightened to work upside down. And now I'm filling in areas and looking for that balance so that we can sort of get some interest going. Because these paints aren't really flowing, I don't have as many problems with the paint getting out of control that I would have if I was using artist quality. So it's a blessing and a curse, as always. You just have to let the paints do what they naturally do rather than trying to fight it all the time. I liked those white rounder marks that I'd done at the bottom, so I thought I'd echo those at the top, which I thought was quite pleasant. And this pink, even though it's actually quite a transparent colour, it does show up on the paper, and just to give it a bit more oomph I dropped in a little bit of the white. I've always been really anti-white watercolour, but I can see obviously I'm just going to have to start using it more if I paint on black. Really like these little marks and dots, so I want to put some smaller marks in elsewhere, and in fact at the end I'm going to splatter in a bit to get some random marks, which will just balance up the formality of this. There is no flow and sort of movement in it, so I thought splatter might balance things up. You could, if you wanted to, if you've got any, sort of go in with an acrylic marker and put in some detail and stuff. Failing that, you could use a little rigger brush when you're ready. Before you do that, you need to make sure this layer is dry. Unfortunately, I don't think you will get all the nice blooms and things that you get with watercolour. Because the metallics really show up well on the black paper, I'm using some silver metallic here. I've pre-wet it so that it's all quite creamy and releases the colour, and I'm just using a small brush to put in a few marks that'll catch the light. I'm not just putting those in the centre of the flowers, I'm putting them elsewhere so that it's balanced, and I'm putting in just a tiny bit of detail, sort of leaves, veins on a couple of the leaves. You know, I don't want to make it fussy, I'm just having a play and a bit of fun, to be honest. This is where my spattering instinct gets the better of me, and I'm just putting in some little silvery spatters. Some of it was a bit hard, so I do need to go back and just lift some of those if it went a bit blobby. Yeah, you can see I'm just sort of smoothing that out in a place. And then with a little rigger, just putting in a few extra lines, trying not to get carried away. As always, it's so easy to do too much rather than too little. And I have to say, I think we're almost there. Or that's what I thought, until I thought, oh, go on, I'll put in some really linear sort of calligraphy type lines just to define those flowers and make sure they look more flower-like rather than the leaves. If you keep those all quite loose by holding your brush a bit further up, they will look more natural rather than forcing them. Again, just lifting a few spatters that I didn't particularly like, and we're done.